Today we're going to be talking about Batman, specifically the Christopher Nolan trilogy. Released in 2005, directed by Christopher Nolan and written by Nolan and David S. Goyer, Batman Begins was a fantastic start to the trilogy. I loved it on release, I loved it across several rewatches, and love it I still do now. Despite being able to separate the flaws, it does contain a touch easier than at times before. But by and large, this is one of the finest comic book movies ever made, and without doubt the finest imagining of Bruce Wayne's journey to becoming Batman that will be committed to celluloid, certainly for a very long time. The key to its success comes from Nolan's approach. He strips away the gothic pantomime of Tim Burton that gave birth to the glossy, overblown camp of Joel Schumacher and takes the Bat back to basics. Gone are the rubber nipples, puns, colourful theatrics, and a focus more on the villains than our hero, replaced with a thorough character study of Bruce Wayne. And here's the rub, Nolan is telling his story, perhaps for the first time truly. Previously Bruce was the act and Batman the reality. Here, in many respects, it's the reverse, or perhaps by the end at least a symbiosis. It allows Christian Bale to get under the skin of the character in a way Val Kilmer or George Clooney never came close to, further indeed than Michael Keaton, who previously gave it a good shot. Portraying Bruce's fear and raw pain alongside Batman's genuine terror as a symbol, an idea. His is a complex figure, moulded and shaped by circumstance and those around him. Chiefly loyal butler Alfred, brought to life with strength and humility by the great Michael Caine, a perfect calm counterpoint to Bruce's rage and hubris. Tom Wilkinson equally impresses as mob boss Falcone, neatly sketching out a smug brutality with a strong Brooklyn accent to boot. As indeed does Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon, displaying an earnest honesty and dry humour that makes the character all his own. But for me, this movie belongs to Liam Neeson. First, as Bruce's mentor Ducard, and later Ra's al Ghul, quite brilliantly delivering dialogue with a grace and menace all at once. He's like a Bond villain supplanted into Gotham, but it works marvellously. An intellectual, cunning foe entangled with Bruce, and indeed Batman, with a complexity few hero-villain relationships ever manage. Neeson bookends, in fact, the two strongest parts of the movie. A superb opening 35 minutes where Nolan takes Bruce to the Himalayas and carefully constructs backstory. And a climactic 40 minutes where all threads combine to reach a quite thrilling conclusion in Gotham City. The midsection does take peaks and troughs though, the pace at times lacking, especially in scenes with Katie Holmes. Her love interest, Rachel Dawes, is easily the weakest link of the film. A dynamic with Bruce Wayne that lacks the punch, or to be honest, the chops of a better actress to sell the character as it was really needed. It's hard to find fault though. Nolan directs with a power and skill that brings Gotham City to life in a dark, desperate and mythological way that no previous Batman director has, opening up the story to areas previously untapped. He employs a mostly fabulous cast to support Christian Bale, who pretty much straight away makes Batman his own. When we talk about the best Batman, he'll be referenced as Connery is to Bond. And despite some slight wobbles in the middle where the plot lacks a touch, it's a breathtaking origin story for, to my mind, the greatest ever superhero in fiction, not to mention the beginning of one of cinema's greatest trilogies. An absolute must-see. Released in 2008, directed by and co-written by Christopher Nolan with his brother Jonathan Nolan, The Dark Knight is frequently compared to Batman Begins, unfairly to my mind, as this is a completely different texture of movie. If Begins was a gloomy origin story and character study of Bruce Wayne's fear, The Dark Knight is a Gotham crime epic that this time explores what it means to be Batman and the consequences of his Caped Crusade. Nolan's sequel is every bit as successful and powerful as his first movie, only on numerous different scales. The Dark Knight is a much grittier movie, lacking the elegance of Begins in terms of its storytelling to match the tone of a city crushing under the weight of crime, of a rebellion against Batman's crusade to rid Gotham of its darker elements. It's a battle, as the Joker describes it, for Gotham's soul, and in parallel that's reflected by Nolan in the battle for Batman's soul, inextricably linked to that of Harvey Dent. the other side of a three-headed coin between they and the Joker, who cuts through the piece in as elemental a form that Batman can be. He acts purely to invoke anarchy, to test the nature of the men who could save Gotham from him, and as a result the action here is injected with layers of depth in characterisation many other films can only dream of. Christian Bale once again holds firm as Batman, here exploring less Bruce Wayne and deeper the consequences of his alter ego, the cost of trying to protect the innocent. Aaron Eckhart puts in a majestic performance as Harvey Dent, tragically portraying a hero who descends into his Two-Face alter ego in a manner the audience can very easily sympathise with. While Maggie Gyllenhaal steps into the role of Rachel Dawes with aplomb, the character here having much greater relevance and impact. And Gary Oldman holds the centre as Jim Gordon, alongside Michael Caine as Alfred, both of them rocks that keep the piece firmly on the wheels. Inevitably though, the film belongs to the late Heath Ledger. So much has been written on his Joker these past few years, it seems pointless to repeat. But it's a performance that will go unmatched in cinema for a very long time, and as an epitaph to a truly great young actor, it serves fittingly. Nolan coaxes his cast into such performances while directing again with an epic scope, evoking the complexity and style of a Michael Mann while retaining his own identity. Though if the film has a flaw, it lies in pacing. Nolan fudges the climactic beat a bit, his final dilemma for Batman not hitting home as previous set pieces have, and one senses a good 10 to 15 minutes could have easily been trimmed along the way in the editing suite. It's celebrated as one of the finest comic book movies ever by many, but that's to sell it short. You can't badge The Dark Knight in with many such movies, as it transcends that genre, hitting beats of characterisation that speak to the legend of Batman in a way no director or writer before Nolan has achieved on screen to the same effect. Its scope is wide, set piece is epic, yet its performance is personal and affecting. But it's no better or worse a film than Batman Begins, rather equal. And much like its predecessor, it's surely required viewing for any serious fan of great cinema. Released in 2012, directed again by Christopher Nolan and co-written with his brother Jonathan, The Dark Knight Rises is the conclusion to an epic cinematic trilogy. It fuses its two previous sequels, adds numerous layers to the story already told, and bravely completes a full circle tale of the Batman saga that no one has given us before, or is likely to again. As a piece of work like its predecessors, it's a little way short of a masterpiece, but Nolan here creates mythic, epic of scope fiction that breaks free of its schlocky shackles and should be judged as a deep, memorable and quite superbly made piece of film. If Batman Begins was the genesis of Bruce Wayne and his transformation into Batman, and The Dark Knight was an examination of what it meant for Bruce to be Batman, then The Dark Knight Rises is about the rise and fall of both men. An 8-year time jump allows Nolan to almost start fresh, put Bruce in a place of darkness and Batman in mothballs, and it becomes very clear very quickly, much like Batman Begins, this is a film about Bruce Wayne. Not about him facing his fear and how to channel it, rather how to let go of Batman, let go of his fear, his pain and his anger. Christian Bale, ever a divisive Batman, once again holds the piece at its centre. He's not as showy as those around him, but he doesn't need to be. He portrays a broken Bruce and a listless Batman to perfection. And make no mistake, this is not the flawless, indestructible Caped Crusader of old. This is a weakened, wounded hero lacking in self-belief, out of practice, and free to be both manipulated and broken down by those around him. Anne Hathaway's Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, Tom Hardy's Bane, or Marion Cotillard's mysterious Miranda Tate. Hathaway is a revelation, and there's a strong argument for her stealing the whole film with her slinky, sexy, yet serious and vulnerable turn as Selina. A much less black and white interpretation than Michelle Pfeiffer's well-known take on the character, looking equally good in black spandex too. Hathaway delivers plenty of shades of grey, delivering her lines and kicking arse with a relish that deserves further exploration in a solo movie somewhere down the line. Hardy is equally impressive as the much talked about Bane, a hulking monster of a figure, and while he may sound ever so slightly Brian Blessed, Batman's alive! He is frequently terrifying, a physical adversary unlike anything any Scream Batman has faced before, which he gets to display in a bone-crunching, visceral fight sequence that shines at the movie's heart. Yet he's also deliberately educated, cunning, even slightly comic. A revolutionary, it's a surprise to learn ultimately he's only partly doing what he is out of a twisted sense of reason and justice, even only partly vengeance towards Bruce Wayne and Batman, but primarily out of love. Enter Cotillard, and it's the least surprising twist of the century to learn she's in fact Talia al Ghul, Ra's revenge-seeking daughter. In many ways, she's the chief villain of the piece by the end, and for me, she's a weak link. A neat and logical tie to begins, honouring comic book lore, yet Cotillard may have the enigma, but she lacks the menace. Her unmasking as Talia, which happens far too late in the day, by the way, holds little punch, even going so far as to weaken Bane's villainy. He almost becomes second fiddle in his final moments, plus he's dispatched far too off the cuff for my liking, especially after Hardy's superb work and the excellent construction of the character. Those may be the central four, but it's packed with supporting and incidental players of note, many of whom play key roles. Morgan Freeman, inevitably, is ever watchable as Lucius Fox, but he's not much more than an exposition machine for much of it, perhaps less so than in the previous movies. Gary Oldman once again plays a crucial role as now Commissioner Gordon, a character Nolan has utilised so well across this trilogy, and here again he helps anchor the piece with an earnest morality that Oldman plays beautifully, especially when it's in question. Joseph Gordon-Levitt equally deserves his own follow-up movie as dogged cop John Blake. He's a reflection of Bruce, a younger model, and while he might as well walk around with Robin on his chest in neon, he still props up Bale and Oldman with the acting chops you'd expect, making what could have been an overplayed role in the narrative much, much more interesting than it ever had a right to be. Wonderfully, however, it's Michael Caine who truly holds the centre of this movie. He's heartbreaking as Alfred, and you'll have to be made of stone not to care in several personal scenes he plays beautifully with Christian Bale. He's not in a great deal of Rises, but the Bruce-Alfred relationship is easily the strongest and the most affecting of the movie. It's to Nolan's credit he's made them feel like extended family across these three films, and they'll be both deeply missed. When it comes to structure, finally, Rises hits and misses. The first third deserved a stronger yard of pace, threatening frequently to sink under the weight of a heavy number of incendiary characters, many played by recognisable faces from movies and TV, Matthew Modine, Nestor Carbonell, Brett Cullen, the list goes on. But when the action hits, it delivers in a way only Christopher Nolan can. From a strikingly daring aerial hijack that opens the piece, through Batman's opening first salvo, and the soon to surely be iconic Batman vs Bane showdown, all the way to its extended climax. It's just pedal to the metal, amplified by Hans Zimmer's bombastic score, dare I say his best yet of the three. The lens is wide, epic, mythic, none more than once Bruce enters the infamous Lazarus Pit. Nolan tying everything around back to Batman Begins with seamless grace, almost as if the whole trilogy was planned this way from the off, which I'm sure he would deny. The beauty of The Dark Knight Rises, of said trilogy as a whole, is how broad the canvas paints. It becomes more than an examination of Bruce Wayne, of the symbol of Batman, rather moving instead into movie making even we can identify with, that we can prescribe meaning to, even though the circumstances are so extreme and fantastical. I believe that's why Christopher Nolan's Batman movies have been such a critical and commercial success, have become a phenomenon as opposed to an experience. And if they're not without their issues or plot holes or momentary slips of character, they deliver tenfold when it comes to power, emotion and awe. You'll guess the last but one scene of this film, I guarantee, but you'll rather be smiling than bemoaning the lack of surprise. And such sentiment can sum up a great conclusion to Christopher Nolan's saga, one I would argue can now rank among the greatest movie trilogies of all time.